Please call the roll. Patty?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Here.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Here.
Commissioner Lemon?
Here.
Commissioner Shea?
Here.
Mayor Dodges?
Here. Now, given that Commissioner Shea is on Zoom, we may have to take all the votes by roll call.
You also have questions that Mr. Shea has to address.
Okay.
Why he can't be here, who's in the room with him.
And, all right, Commissioner Shea, could you tell us why you can't attend and who's in the room with you, if anyone?
Yes. So I've got a COVID exposure this past weekend and a sore throat today. So out of an abundance of caution, trying not to expose people just in case. My wife is here in the room with me, although she's across the house. And other than that, I am alone.
Okay. So our first item is to approve the agenda. Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve the agenda as presented on the goldenrod copy.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. We need a roll call.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. Next item is the approval of the minutes. Commissioner Shea. If not Commissioner Shea, Commissioner Lemon.
A motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of February 23rd, 2023.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. We have public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the Board of Public Works? I don't see anyone, but we are going to receive input from first Attorney Bolton and then Treasurer John Griffin.
Thank you. I understand at a previous meeting, a question arose concerning the authority of the Board of Public Works to not award a contract to the lowest bidder, taking into consideration other factors not directly related to the contract itself. I think the example was a bidder was proposing a project in the city that people may feel is not in the best interests of the city. We have a series of ordinances. It's Chapter 5 in the Administration of Government section of the city ordinances. It begins at RSA or NRO section 5-69 and continues through 5-92 that govern purchases. Essentially, anything over $10,000 in value has to be purchased or contracted for by competitive bid, with some exceptions, which I will get to later, if necessary. In a competitive bid situation, the contract must be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. There can be a preference given to local contractors if the difference in price is less than 5%. Other than that, it's the lowest responsible bidder. If there's federal money involved with the contract, that local preference is out of the window. So many of your contracts will have federal grant money involved. So lowest responsible bidder. What does responsible bidder mean? The ordinance contains a list of factors that can be considered in determining if a bidder is not responsible. And there are 10 of them. It's fairly long, but they all revolve around the capacity of the bidder to fulfill the contract. So if the bidder cannot show that they have done similar projects in the past, do not have the financial wherewithal to do it, if they've broken the laws in the past in performing work, those things would factor into a consideration of whether that bidder was responsible, in which case you could reject the bid of that irresponsible bidder and go to what would be then the lowest responsible bidder, that low bidder being not responsible as determined. So you still need the lowest responsible bidder. It's just a question of which one that is in considering the word responsible. Now, in cases where it is more complex, for example, if the proposal is to choose between one developer and another developer that are competing for the same rights to build a project in the city, or the city land should be turned over for the purpose of this development, then you can consider not doing it by a bid process, but by a competitive proposal process. In which case, you could consider factors such as what the developer proposes to build and what would be in the best interests of the city, what are the desires of the city, and such other factors as their experience in similar developments, their experience or the aesthetic value of previous projects they've completed, those sorts of factors. But whatever you want to consider, you've got to state up front when you're sending out the request for proposals. So you have to state right up front, the proposals will be evaluated on this basis: price, timing, projected outcome, aesthetic quality of the proposed design. Those sorts of things can be set forth, and then an evaluation can be made as which proposal is in the best interests of the city. For professional services, you don't have to put that out to competitive bid. You don't have to put it out to competitive proposals. So for things like if you're hiring lawyers, accountants, in some cases engineers, not in some cases, engineers would definitely fall into that category. Insurance experts, potentially. A lot of experts in some particular area that the city requires in order to get competent advice on some matters. That you can just decide on whatever basis to hire a person or a firm that the city believes to be qualified to provide that guidance the city needs. So that's the long and short of what's required. There's a lot more details in those sections of the ordinance that I mentioned, and I commend that to your attention if there's further interest in delving into it. Most of the time, you will want to go with the lowest bid. If there's a question of whether that bidder is responsible, a lot of investigation will be necessary because the burden will be on the city to prove that irresponsibility. And what we don't want to have to do is pay 2 contractors and only get the work done once. And as I say, most of the time you're going to be dealing with the bid process as opposed to competitive proposals or any other process. I would urge, if there's a consideration of not going with the apparent low bidder, probably not the best idea to bring that up at a meeting by motion. Probably best to get the ball rolling on that consideration earlier on when it first occurs to any one of you. Call us at the legal department, call the purchasing department if they're involved, which they ought to be involved in putting out the invitation to bid. Talk to people in the city engineer's office if they have knowledge. If we're going to reject someone as being an irresponsible bidder or try and go with some other factor unrelated to the contract, best to get well prepared in advance and understand what the risks are, because there will be risks.
All right, any questions for Attorney Bolton?
I just want to thank Attorney Bolton for taking the time to offer this education. It's unfortunate for some reasons that you know, we would not be able to consider moral factors in approval or declining any given contract. But the law is the law, and we operate under these confines for good reasons. And I appreciate Attorney Bolton taking the time tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Now we have Treasurer CFO Griffin.
May I be excused?
You may,
Thank you.
although I encourage you to stay just to, you know, get some. I'm joking. I'm joking.
All day and all night sometimes. Good evening, all.
So, John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. Pleasure to be here today. I generally watch the Board of Public Works meetings, and I know Commissioner Shoneman has some good questions on the paving program that might not be readily apparent. So I developed a one-pager, basically tagging it paving program and related financing as of today, March 2023. As you all know, it's a 10-year paving program, started in fiscal 18. We expect it to run through fiscal 27. The approved amount totally is $75 million. The amount spent to date is slightly over $36 million, so you've made great progress with regard to spend in paving roads. For essentially year 6, that's the amount encumbered via purchase orders, and you most recently have approved contracts for paving to be done this summer and into the fall. We set up a special road and highway fund, which essentially captures the revenue that's going to pay for the bonds. In addition, the expenses in that fund are the debt service, so I'm going to get into that at this point. We decided to bond $7.5 million annually, essentially a year after you've spent the money. That does a couple of things. One is we know you spent the money, and number two is we won't have any IRS problems, what's called arbitrage. IRS frowns on borrowing money and investing it and not using it for the purposes under which it's been requested. So this whole program has been reviewed by our bond counsel, very important, to get their approval before we can issue bonds. Bonds are part of a package of bonds that are competitively bid. Some are taxable, but most of them are non-taxable. We have exemptions of taxation of the earnings of the bonds to the bond holders. So we've sold, as I mentioned, $30 million. We've sold 4 rounds of the 7.5, $30 million. So we have a ways to go. We have $45 million remaining to be sold. So the two components are the spend, the contracts that you approve, and the bonds that pay for those contracts. Now, when you sell bonds, you have what's called debt service, which essentially provides the bondholders with some principal repayment plus the earnings, the interest earnings paid to the bondholders. Now, as you know, the first 3 years of these bonds, very attractive rates before inflation started getting the better of us. So we sold bonds as low as 1.63. Last year was a little over 3. So we keep an eye on the market. We have Hilltop Securities, which is our financial advisor, and they've been with the city for quite some time. So there's the two components I mentioned. We have to pay the $75 million back, plus the interest cumulatively, prospectively, from fiscal 20 to, believe it or not, fiscal 43. And I think that's where we kind of, that's a ways away for us. But the 16.3 is a lot cheaper for our taxpayers than paying cash. We're borrowing, as I mentioned, 1.63 2 years ago, a lot less a rate than our ratepayers, our taxpayers would pay. The reality was back when the aldermen approved this program and you folks approved the program was that we needed to pave the roads as effectively, efficiently, as timely as possible. So this has been a good plan for us. We didn't want to put it on the base taxation, so we receive annually a highway block grant, which is about $1.5 million, $1.6 million from the state. And we also do quite well with motor vehicle revenue, where you all come and register your vehicles. There's a portion that we collect that we have to send to the state, but we collect around 14, 15 million, and we shave some of that off to put in as a revenue stream in that highway fund that I mentioned. So we expect, as of today, receiving 44 million total from fiscal 18 to fiscal 43. The state highway block grant, we hope it's more. Sometimes we get additional funding from the state because they recognize how important roads are. And the motor vehicle, that's the amount that helps us pay any differential. Because the bonds are staggered at 7.5 million over 10 years, if you can picture the debt service is going to be low at the beginning, then it's going to rise, and then it's going to come down as the first bonds are totally paid off sooner than the others. So you have this multiple debt structure. But in any event, personally, I was here since 2010, and I know we struggled mightily with paving our roads, and this was a good solution for a couple of reasons. One is you want to pave the roads and couple that with the team behind me, working with the utilities to have them go ahead of us pave the roads. From time to time, I was a 20-year veteran of the natural gas business, so I know from time to time you have, I think it's level 2 issues with leaking of the gas pipes, and we've seen some devastation there. So I listened to the debate, but when I worked in Lowell, they partnered with the city of Lowell and tried to do the best they could. But the roads seem to be in much better shape than they were when I arrived. I'm not swerving around potholes and all of that. So I just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure to see the progress, see the team working, get the contracts, make sure the asphalt is true asphalt, and fund it with this mechanism that we take great care of and interest in and try to get the best rates we can. So with that, any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for Mr. Griffin? Commissioner Schoeneman.
I'm not an economist. You can ask my husband. I'm not great with money. I would like to understand, I know that a city government works different than a home budget or a personal budget. But I wonder if you could explain to me how it is financially in the best interests of those who have to pay back the debt to borrow money, even if it's at 1.6%, than it is to pay cash, to budget it and to pay cash.
I certainly can do that.
Go ahead.
So if we paid cash the very first year, fiscal 18, we'd be putting in the general fund budget 7.5 million. So that's a situation where I'm going to just round off, every 2.5 million is 1% on the tax rate. So whatever your rate was back then, 2018, you'd have to add essentially 3% to pay for the first year. The other thing you have to look at is these bonds are 15 years. Hopefully the product that's put down lasts more than that, especially with some of the measures you're taking. But we would be essentially increasing the tax rate by 3% every year for the next 10 years. So you want to borrow. And what I'm saying, expressing, is that we can borrow as a city for the benefit of the community at much lower rates than they can. So at some point, you have to borrow money. It's the prudent thing to do. Totally approved by the bond council as an expenditure. But it's with that blush that was suggesting that it's better to bond things that you folks approve time to time on solid waste, wastewater, et cetera. This is kind of the same thing. Creative way of getting paving. As Director Photo and I know that my first year here, we had $1 million we spent on paving, and you really can't get ahead of the game. You invested in a study that suggested that you needed some rapid paving. The folks behind me will tell you can't do all $75 million in 1 year, so it was a 10-year program, and it was financed over that period. So just like if you bought a house, you'd love to pay cash for it, but the reality is you might not have that cash. You want to use the cash for some other things. And if the first decision you make is you need the roads repaved, reclaimed, repaved, shored up, right? Once you decide that, then it's the best way to finance it. So I would just say that it's a more efficient and effective way of helping an asset of the city immediately and having the taxpayers, well, not the tax, using the highway block grant plus the motor vehicle revenue, which is a good nexus for roads, to pay for that over time. That's why we do bond things instead of immediately paying cash. Hopefully, but if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have item 5A, R23087, Commissioner Shoneman.
This is a referral authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $525,150 for the purchase of one new 850L crawler dozer for the Division of Public Works.
And Mr. LaFleur, I believe, is here.
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent Solid Waste. This is the piece of equipment that I spoke about a couple months ago about purchasing for the landfill. It does a lot of our grading. It helps us cover our landfill trash every day, daily cover per our permit. This is a needed piece of equipment. We'll be keeping the other one as a backup, so when one breaks down, we always have one running.
Questions? Commissioner Shoneman.
And this purchase is not, is it or isn't it in the SURF program?
It is in the SURF program, but it's bonded.
But it's bonded. Okay, so it's not technically in our budget. We have to borrow more to purchase this. But you think it's badly needed enough that we have to borrow?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm having an issue with the dozer right now that I have at the landfill. It's down, so I have no dozer. I'm renting a dozer right now to get that one repaired. So this one would help me with rental costs and everything. So I'll have two pieces of equipment, if one breaks down.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes for a favorable recommendation? Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes, the motion passes. Next, we have area wastewater, item A, Commissioner Moriarty.
Item A would be to approve the user warrants as presented.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Next, item B, Commissioner Shea.
The motion is to approve the rebuild of raw wastewater pump number 4 by First Electric Motor Service Incorporated of Woburn, Mass. In the amount of $52,267.60. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund Wastewater, Account Classification 54, Property Services.
Mr. Boucher?
Thank you, Dave Boucher, wastewater superintendent. So this is to rebuild the last of 4 raw water pumps in our wet weather facility, capable of pumping 20 million gallons per day. We put this out to bid, and First Electric was the low bidder on the project. We'd like to use them. They rebuilt 2 of the 3 that have been rebuilt already. It's more efficient than buying a whole new pump, which is 3 times the cost.
All right. Anyone? Commissioner Lemon?
How long does a rebuild usually last?
At least 10 years on a rebuild. Yeah, they rebuild it like new.
Thank you.
Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Motion passes. Now we have item C, Commissioner Lemon.
The motion is to approve the award of the WWTF anaerobic digester, additional heat exchanger, and stair tower fan upgrades project to Weston and Sampson CMR Incorporated from Reading, Mass. In the amount of $178,899. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund Wastewater, Activity Heat Exchanger / Primary Digester.
Thank you, Dave Boucher, wastewater superintendent. So this is for the installation of a second heat exchanger for redundancy at the bottom of our primary digester, the big egg at the wastewater plant. The heat exchangers allow our sludge to stay at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This project also includes all the plumbing associated with the heat exchanger, all the controls, and also the installation. Well, there's a fan that's located at the top of our stairwell, huge stairwell on top of the roof that we can't access to maintain. So this is to relocate it to a more accessible location. You happen to answer any questions?
Anyone? Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're on to engineering. Item A, Commissioner Shoneman.
I move to approve the engineering services contract with Hayner Swanson Incorporated of Nashua, New Hampshire in the amount of $284,500 for professional services for the sewer rehabilitation program. Funding through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund Bond, Activity Sewer Infrastructure Improvements.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. This motion before you is is with the consultant Hayner Swanson to help in support of our sewer program, which includes sewer and drain rehabilitation, CCTV lining, pipelining, pipe and structure replacement, administration, design, and inspection. HSI, they are a local company with experience that we've used in the past with this ongoing program to help our sewer infrastructure. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Motion passes. Item B, Commissioner Moriarty.
I move to approve the use of Daniel Webster Highway Traffic Corridor funds for the installation of underground vehicle detection loops by East Coast Signals, Inc. of Deerfield, New Hampshire, on the Royal Ridge Mall approach to Spitbrook Road for an amount of $3,000. Funding for this work will be from the Daniel Webster Highway Traffic Corridor account.
Mr. Saunders?
Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. So this motion is for authorization to use the corridor funds for the loop installation. Last summer during Royal Ridge's pavement activities, they damaged one of the loops, which we found out later in the process. They went ahead and they made a contribution to the corridor fund for the amount of $3,000, and that's what we're asking to use to replace the loops in this, so that any exiting vehicle can be detected. I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Out of curiosity, I think it seems like we've been moving away from the underground loops and going more towards the video vehicle detection. Do we really want to spend $3,000 on something that's going to kind of be obsolete?
No, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. No, great question. So this was, the $3,000 that got put into this account was from the contractor that damaged them. Those overhead cameras that have come before the board, they're in the cost range of anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000. So it's much more expensive. So this is the solution that where they're paying for the mistake they made. So it's kind of went to our account where we're asking this board to authorize that funding so we can complete the work, so we can get detection back at that intersection.
Okay, thank you.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Motion passes. So items C and D are informational. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding item C?
Mr. Mayor, I have a presentation.
Oh, okay,
queued
go
up,
ahead.
so if I can do that, that'd be great.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. I'm also joined here by Hoyle Tanner. I'm here today to give a proposed action presentation for a pedestrian safety project focused in the downtown area. This meeting is to present proposed actions at eligible crosswalk locations. Today's presentation will focus on the countermeasures proposed for each location. In order to do that effectively, I will go through existing safety issues and typical countermeasures that will be utilized in this project. To refresh everyone's memory from the local concerns meeting held back in November of last year, STEP stands for Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian. This project started out as a grant application in 2019 with a goal of improving pedestrian safety throughout the downtown. This is now a project being completed jointly with New Hampshire Department of Transportation and Federal Highway. Existing safety issues. The following issues were found throughout the project footprint: pedestrian warning sign locations, roadway width, ponding, lighting levels, sight distance, inconspicuous crossing location, and ADA compliance. This is to give you a general overview. This is not at every location, but each location has a combination of these existing issues. The picture on the top is Factory Street, that you could see where the warning sign is not in the correct location, as well as the pavement markings are faded and there's no ADA access to that location. Same with the rail trail, there's some ADA issues there. And then the bottom is Walnut Street, where there's no pedestrian crossing signs. It's a hidden crosswalk. There's some sightline visibility with pedestrians in the crosswalk. So that's to kind of give everyone a general overview of the safety issues we're trying to correct with the countermeasures. This slide explains the countermeasures that are going to be proposed in increasing pedestrian safety. Each location has a combination, not all of them, just a combination of these countermeasures. In the next few slides, we'll go over in detail the combination and what countermeasures at specified location. But this is, once again, to give a general overview of what's out there. So we have pavement markings, pedestrian warning signs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, also known as RRFBs, curb extension, drainage installation, parking restrictions, in-street pedestrian signs, crosswalk relocation, raised crosswalks, and lighting. To give everyone in the room, as well as yourself, over on the far right, that is an RRFB. Right on the top, to the left of that, on the top, those are high visibility pavement markings. And in the bottom left-hand corner, that is an example of a curb extension. And as we go through each location, I'll show you existing and proposed in a little more detail. Throughout this process, several locations defined in the grant have been identified as do nothing due to several factors, such as a countermeasure was installed before the grant was awarded, the crossing location was eliminated through another project, or the crossing location is in a footprint of another proposed project, as well as some locations would require the acquisition of right-of-way, which is out of the scope. All right, so the next several slides are going to be the locations that we're proposing an action on. And as I said earlier, on the left-hand side of the screen, that's existing conditions. On the right-hand side is what's proposed. The first location I'm going to discuss is Factory Street Mid-Block. This is located at the parking garage. The safety issues observed were the warning sign locations, roadway width, drainage, and lighting levels. The proposed countermeasures are high visibility pavement markings, RRFBs, curb extensions, new drainage, and lighting. So if you guys can see the cursor going around here, that is the curb extension. This is the RFB. That is the typical drainage, and these are the typical pavement markings. That is going to be the same format is going to be shown in the next several slides at the different locations. The next location is Walnut Street at the mid-block. The safety issues observed were no pedestrian warning signs, sight distance issues, inconspicuous crossing, and roadway width. The proposed countermeasures are to relocate the crossing to High Street. This will provide more stopping sight distance for vehicles and more sight distance for the pedestrian. It's also to provide high visibility pavement markings, RRFBs, curb extensions, and parking restriction. The next two locations are going to be on Kinsley Street, and the same approach was taken at each location. Shown here is Kinsley at Vine Street. The safety issues observed were the warning sign locations, sight distance, and roadway width. The proposed countermeasures are to relocate the crossing upstream, that is to protect pedestrians from turning vehicles onto Kinsley Street, install high visibility pavement markings, as well as RRFBs, curb extensions to shorten the crossing distance. Much like that previous slide, this is the other location on Kinsley Street, and it mirrors what I just presented. I would like to add that at each of these locations, there is a tree at each of these locations that impairs sight distance. It's located on the northern side, as well as that is also damaging the sidewalk, and we are looking to either remove or relocate those trees. Before you is Canal at Railroad Square. The safety issues here are sight distance, roadway width, and lighting levels. The proposed countermeasures are going to be high visibility pavement markings, RRFBs, curb extensions, in-street pedestrian sign, and parking restrictions. Lastly, we have looked at several rail trail crossings. Right here is a typical crossing, but the 5 rail trail crossings we are looking at are Vine, Chestnut, Walnut, Ash, and Beach Street. They all have the same issues, and we're proposing the same countermeasures at each one. So the plan that you're seeing will be implemented over all 5 of them. The safety issues for these locations were warning signs, sight distance, and inconspicuous crossing. The proposed countermeasures are warning and trail signs, a colored surface marker to make the crossing stand out more, detectable warnings for ADA compliance, and parking restriction.
You didn't put pictures of the bums that have been hanging around front of my building all the time that you guys don't take care of. Don't forget that part.
Okay. Next steps. After this meeting, after we gather the input, we're gonna go through, finalize the preliminary design, input that to DOT for approval, and move on to final design. After final design, we'll advertise, and then after that is construction. So at this time, I'd like it to open up to questions and comments. And if we may, allow the public to comment after the board, because this is part of following an LPA process, and we need to have a public input for this project. So and lastly, I did place a sign-in sheet. It's over on that back table for anyone interested in being on a correspondence list. Much like the last meeting, we had a couple of people sign up, so that's always productive. So at this time, I'll stand back and answer any questions from the board and then the public.
All right. Board members, Commissioner Schoeneman.
Excuse me. Can we go back to the funding page?
There is no funding page on this presentation. That was back on the local concerns. It kind of looks like the same presentation, but I can answer any question you have about funding.
It looked like you were saying that this is primarily grant funded.
It is. So we applied for a grant back in 2019 from Federal Highway. They had the STEP program, which is from an accelerated deployment. So we received a grant for $556,000, where the city had to provide a 20% match, or $113,000, and all that fund has been all those funding has been appropriated.
Okay, and is that the extent of the funding for the project? What is the total cost of the project projected?
So right now, our preliminary design estimate has us close to the total upset of the project, which is the $565,000. That includes consulting, inspection, design, and construction. We have taken a hands-on role, so we do have our in-house engineering team has done a bulk of the work, and as I said, I also have Hoyle Tanner. They've done the environmental aspect as well as some QA, QC parts of the project as well.
Okay, great. And another question?
Absolutely.
Will Streets Department be doing the construction, or is it going to be contracted out?
Nope, this is going to be contracted out. This is a federal project, so there's strict requirements with Davis-Bacon, as well as inspection, full-time inspection, qualified. So there's several things, and this is, as you can see here, as I have Kinsley and Vine Street opened up, it's extending the curb and doing the sidewalk, but it's also, if you see the hatched gray area, that's proposing to mill and overlay the road to tie the project in and fully make it a complete project. So it is very, very detailed that we are going to go out to an outside contractor for.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so why don't we open the meeting to questions or comments on this project from anybody from the public? Okay, please just step forward one at a time. Just give your name and address, and then give us your comments, please.
Donald Dillaby, 27 Palisade Drive, but I'm representing the American Legion Post 3 at 11 Court Street. We received an abutters letter, but I don't see any connection to 11 Court Street in any of this presentation. I'm just wondering how we fit into this.
So a part of Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer, as a part of these projects, we go through an extensive environmental process. And through that environmental process, it was determined that due to the demographics of the region, that we needed to reach out to community centers. So we sent out an invitation for the meeting so that we can get the word out, so that we have as much public input as possible. And those include local churches, I believe the VFW Post, as he just said, several post offices. So that invitation, per the environmental assessment, had a list of about 12 places. That is community outreach that we provided to open up the conversation and show everyone the proposed action.
And this outreach is a requirement of the federal grant, as I...
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Any other members of the public wish to comment on the proposal? Just come on forward and just give your name and let us know what you're thinking.
I'm Paula Lockhead. I'm actually a representative today from the Historical Society. We received some notification about it. My bigger concern, however, is the curb extensions. To me, sometimes those are like an obstacle course. Just thinking about it.
Mr. Saunders?
Thank you for the question. So the curb extensions we are proposing are within the hatch parking area, thus for these locations. So we're not going out more into the street. For example, Kinsley Street, if you go further upstream to Ash Street, there's a curb extension there that we're going to mirror throughout, and we're going to keep the same countermeasures for each corridor. So like I said, everything's kind of done in the existing parking.
And what is the purpose of the curb extension?
The curb extension is twofold. It helps with getting ADA access if you have very, very tight specific grades. It's going to allow the rapid flashing beacon further out so that it's more visible. It's also going to allow a pedestrian to have to get out in front of those parked cars a little more so they have a better line of sight. And it's also going to shorten that distance that someone's crossing the road.
Any other members of the public wish to make comment or ask questions? Yes, please just, again, state your name and address, and then let us know.
Dan, 58 Vine Street. Now, I have a building over there, and there's homeless people evacuate. You want to do something nice, right? But there's homeless people evacuating themselves constantly in front of my buildings. I've called the city about it. I've called the Ward 4 alderman about it. Okay. Women, men, right in front of the building, on the trail. Okay? This is happening between where he's talking about, from Walnut down through, all the way down through past Ash. They're always there, there's garbage everywhere. So, and historically wise, I hope you're not gonna turn the city into some crazy looking place. Because when I was a kid, we knew how to cross streets without all this contraptions that you're putting in, you know that, right? Because we let the cars go by when we were kids. We didn't, and then we crossed. Okay, but now, all of a sudden, the cars all got to come to a screeching halt. So what changed? Just out of curiosity.
And your building is at 58 Vine?
Yeah.
The one you were speaking of at the beginning?
Yeah, but it happens up and down the road. I know this.
Okay. Mr. Saunders?
So I can't speak to the first part of his comments. I think that's for a different forum. But as for the contraptions we're putting in, we're promoting drivers to yield. One fatality is too many. Whether you're an able-bodied person crossing the road and you choose to cross at somewhere where it's not a signalized or mid-block or marked crosswalk, that happens every day. But we're out here, it's vision zero, and we're trying to do things to our city to promote walking, especially in the most marginalized section of town, so that we can hopefully increase pedestrian safety throughout the downtown core of the city.
Commissioner Schoeneman?
When I was a kid, we knew how to cross streets too. But when I was a kid, so many years ago, people drove slower, and people were not distracted by screens and other things going on in the car. I wouldn't hesitate, well, I would hesitate to say that they were any better drivers back then, but I think that these things are necessary. Even on Main Street, people drive so fast. In these small streets, in the tree streets, people still drive so fast, and half the time, they're not even looking at the road. If you stand on the road and you watch the drivers, half of them have their heads down. I commend the city for trying to make it safer for people who are crossing the street where they're supposed to cross the street, hopefully not taking their life into their hands. I agree that, even one fatality, if it's preventable, is too much. My 2 cents.
Yes, please come ahead. Again, just give your name and address, again, just so it's clear.
Did you grow up in Nashua?
I didn't.
I grew up in Nashua. The traffic's not any
Now,
different.
could you just give us your name and address, please?
58 Vine Street, Dan.
Just so the record is clear, we have
Oh.
written minutes, so
58 Vine Street, Dan
Dan who?
LaPointe.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the traffic's the same, okay? And listen, what are you gonna live in a cage? I mean, it's like, what are you gonna live your life in a cage? One guy gets hurt somewheres, and you're gonna change your whole entire lifestyle? I mean, where's the faith in God? Where's that gone? Okay, every day I put my hands in God's hands, and whatever happens, happens. My wife died 22 years ago, okay, and there's nothing I could have done about it, nor you or any of you, quite frankly, okay? And that's life. So, just saying, okay? But you guys are gonna change everything about this city, and listen, this theater is gonna cost us tons of money, and you're never gonna get it back. Believe me, you will never get people to come there. It will suck us, and we got hit hard in taxes, hit hard everywhere. I have multiple properties, okay? And I try to keep my tenants' rents low, but you guys forced me to raise them. Remember that.
All right, any other members of the public wish to make comment or question this project? Any commissioners?
Just a
Commissioner
further
Moriarty.
comment. I'm certainly in favor of the project. I think that you're doing a great job with the presentation, Mark, and I think the city needs it. I was just thinking, I think studies show that these bump outs, which you call it, I don't know if it's the same as the extension, but I know the bump outs have been shown through research to slow down traffic, even though they're not making the lanes any more narrow. It's just psychologically, the cars slow down because they feel it's more narrow, and it's a good move. I mean, it's been shown.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct on traffic calming, yes.
All right, anyone else?
If I could,
Commissioner Shea.
thank you so much. So for the Railroad Square portion, are there going to be any improvements there as far as the grading on either side of Canal Street where it meets Main? We've got some drainage issues there that are kind of enduring, and I'm just wondering if there's plans to address any of that alongside all these other tactical implementations.
Fixing something along Main Street and Canal is outside the scope of the project. What you see here is the Canal at Railroad Square slide. The slide to the right, that is the footprint of the project. It's focused on the mid-block crossings only.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
do you have anything else?
No, but if we could, bear that in mind as we move forward, I think that addressing some of those drainage issues will help with the quality of the pavement surface area there, especially with frost heaving, as well as make it more pedestrian friendly. I know it's not in this scope, but I figure while we're kind of talking about the area, I would raise the issue. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Commissioner Shea, I will take a look at this location, and I will also enter it into our cartograph program so it can be tracked. So when something does come up around the area, we can look to correct it.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I'm talking about specifically the crosswalk. If you were to be walking from Peddler's Daughter straight up to the Hunt Memorial Building, that crosswalk there is the area where I see a grading issue. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Is there anything else you think we need to do?
No, I have, there's one more motion that I'll be here for. So
Which
if there's
is,
any questions, it's the second informational
Street opening permits?
in moratorium roads, correct.
All right, well, there's an informational item regarding street opening permits. Do you have anything on that?
I do not, unless there's any specific questions.
Any questions? All right, I don't see anything, so we will go to now Park and Rec. We have item A, Commissioner Shea.
The motion is to allow ArborJet Inc. To conduct a tree injection study involving birch trees.
All right, Mr. Conant?
Good evening, everyone. Brian Conant, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. I had brought this in front of you as a informational piece. There were some concerns that were brought up by Commissioner Shea. I reached out to the state forest entomologist. I believe you all have that letter of support. I'd like to bring your attention to the specific paragraph 4. Really, the last sentence does it for me. It's about as environmentally friendly as any pesticide application could be. I've seen this done throughout my professional career, and I would say that sentence right there is about as accurate as you can be. I've seen some emails come in from one particular resident having some concerns that what we're going to inject in the tree might come out of the tree. Cat might lick it, dog might lick it. I want to remind everybody, this is a 3-ace drill hole that's going to go about 1.5 inches into the tree, and we're talking about injecting 10 millimeters per inch on a tree. 30 milliliters in an ounce for everybody. Talking about a very, very, very small amount of product. Well, that's really all I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any other questions if there are any. I support this. I think this is something we should be doing. There are about 6 birch trees that are very beautiful in a couple of our different parks that, we should be doing this to prolong the life of those trees. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody? All right, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner.
Oh, I just wanted to note that, thank you, sorry, it's tough with not having a hand raised. I appreciate that we've taken the time to reach out for expert advice on whether to move forward with this. Especially in a world where we're looking at broad spectrum antibiotics as an example, being the cause of some issues down the road for us in various settings, whether it's agriculture or medicine. I think it's very good that we attended to this and got some more insights that can help us move forward with confidence. So thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner Shea.
Okay, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to the street department. An informational item. Is anyone going to make a presentation on that?
No, but Mayor,
Okay.
I can speak to that.
All right.
So this is our annual spring cleanup. It will take place from April 10th through April 21st. Residents may start calling March 27th through April 7th for a pickup. And this will be one truckload of material placed at the curb. Acceptable items include brush, cut end toward the street, no larger than 4-inch diameter and no longer than 8 feet. Shrubs, which must be cleaned of sand and soil. Picnic tables, wood only. Doors, glass must be secure and nails removed. And wood posts without concrete. We're not accepting any metal goods or household hazardous waste in this pickup, just the items that I mentioned.
Commissioner Lemon.
I get a lot of questions about mattresses. What are people supposed to do if they have a mattress? Are they supposed to have a permit and bring it to the landfill? Can they call for a pickup? What's the deal with mattresses?
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste. I got lonely back there, so I just. We're going to actually start our bulky collection. We're going to start taking calls April 10th, I believe. It might be on one of our slides.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is, it's coming up.
Unprepared. Yes, April 10th, we'll start taking calls.
Yep.
Through the 14th. The collections will start on the 17th. But mattresses, people can bring into the landfill, as long as they have a permit. They're more than welcome to bring them in.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, let's go to solid waste. Item A, Commissioner Lemon.
I move to approve a contract with Sanborn Head and Associates Incorporated to perform field observation and construction quality assurance activities to document the construction of the Phase 3, Stage 2 temporary cap installation project in the amount not to exceed $150,000. Funding through Department 168 Solid Waste, Fund, Bond, Activity, Zigzag.
All right, Mr. LaFleur.
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste. As you know, there was a second stage to the Phase 3 landfill. We were going to build a zigzag, per se. We went out to bid, wanted to do the full project. The bid came back astronomically high. Like, we budgeted $5 million. The bids actually came back at $7.5 million.
Holy moly.
We can't justify spending that much money for 2 years of airspace at this time. This motion and the second motion that's coming after this is to do a temporary cap. It's to start the first phase of the zigzag. We're going to place soils. We're going to put a cap there, a liner cap. It's going to weld to the landfill. It's going to stop any leachate issues, any blowouts, any liquids that would come out of the landfill. So we're prepping to do the last phase, the zigzag, the zag part of the zig. Kind of weird. This is the quality assurance for the engineers to watch over, make sure we're making the connections, the qualified contractor making the connections properly, signing all the documents, making sure that we can submit it to DES.
All right. Anyone? Anything else? Commissioner Schoeneman.
For the uninitiated, can you give a brief description of what exactly zigzag is?
Absolutely. The city designed a wall, the wall that for the setback of the 500-foot setback to the landfill. I've been coming to the board for multiple years to build a wall. The zigzag essentially removes the wall building from the project. Now it's a liner system that comes into the landfill. We fill soil all around it, and then the zag comes back out, gaining us 2 extra years of airspace. Again, right now, it's not monetarily or fiscally responsible to do that project. So we're just going to do the zig part. We're going to put some soils, put the liner up, and get it prepared. Later down the line, when it becomes fiscally responsible to do it, 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, whatever the time frame is, we could always go back and capture this 2 years airspace.
A diagram would be helpful.
Let's hope not.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. Motion passes. Now we're on to item B, Commissioner Shoneman.
I move to award Charter Contracting Company LLC a contract for a reduced scope of services for the Phase 3 Stage 2 zigzag landfill expansion to include installation of a temporary HDPE cap along the Phase 3 side slopes in the amount not to exceed, does that say $1,359,200? Funding through the Department 168 Solid Waste Fund Bond Activity Zigzag.
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent Solid Waste. So yes, it is $1.35 million project. Again, it's not something that's just going to be thrown away. It's nothing that's going to be not able to use other than the liner itself when we go to capture the 2 years of airspace. So this is something that DES is going to require us to do. Whether we do the zigzag or not, it's a temporary cap. So it's going to capture any leachate issues that we have. It's going to stop anything going into groundwater. So it's something that would have happened or helped. It would have been part of the project just at a higher price or a higher amount. I would have had to do 3 liners or 2 liners and a geocomposite in between it. Right now, it's just 1 liner going up the slope to suffice for DES until the future when we need to, or we want to capture the extra 2 years of airspace. Yes, it's $1.35 million. It's a lot of money. But again, it's something that will have to be done at one time or another anyways. So now's the time to do it, to capture, to save us with the leachate.
All right, anyone? Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're on to the director's report. And so I will turn things over to Director Photo.
I'll start while Patty pulls it up. As part of our CMOM Phase 2, which is, again, is Capacity Management, Operations and Management project, National Water Main continues to inspect sewers and storm drains using closed-circuit television. The sewers you're looking at here are at the Nashua Mall, Coliseum Ave, and storm drains on Eastbrook Drive. We are also preparing some, a future pedestrian bridge is planned or conceived to be built across the Nashua River as part of the redevelopment of the Mohawk Tannery site. Geotechnical borings are required in Mine Falls Park near the soccer fields this spring to support future design of a potential bridge. That would be a really cool addition. This is the removal of snow at Stella Stadium, so we can start our spring sports. The new light installation at Levine softball field continues. We have had a very warm winter, so we've had a really difficult time maintaining ice at both the skating rinks at Four Corners and Levine. Roby's really the only place because of the chill that we've been able to maintain ice this winter. We're currently getting ready for spring and summer programming. Registration for summer camps opened on March 1st already, and baseball and softball registrations opened in February. This is a picture of crews removing snow on Main Street, and this was in anticipation of our St. Patrick's Day celebrations. We have emergency backup generators at the wastewater treatment plant. At one of them, the fuel tanks for one of them was compromised, so it was leaking, so we needed to replace it. We installed a new tank. Our laboratory supervisor, Michelle Gaudet, trained her staff on staining techniques for filament identification. Filaments are organisms that can grow in the wastewater process, and it causes extensive settling, so we have to watch that very closely to make sure that we have the right mix. We've been doing a lot of painting, given that it's been cold at the wastewater treatment plant and catching up on inside projects. Pump Station 2 upgrades continue. This is Santerre, which is nearing completion. This is the Harris Preserve Pump Station. This shows the outside of the station and the pumps that are inside. Our first household hazardous waste collection of 2023 will be held appropriately on Earth Day, Saturday, April 22nd. Soft yard waste collections begin the week of April 17th. And also bulky and scrap metal starts the same time, April 17th. Residents may start calling on April 10th, though, to schedule a pickup. And just as a reminder, residents are allowed 5 items per season for pickup, for oversized items, and that's it. Any questions?
Commissioner Lemon.
I was wondering, are you anticipating the need for as many lifeguards as before?
Yes.
Okay.
We are. And if you know any lifeguards, that's becoming a greater and greater challenge. We have, I think, so far about 15 returning, but we really should have between 25 and 30.
And what's the youngest they can be? They have to be certified, but you'll train them?
We will certify them too.
Okay,
15.
okay.
When does registration for swim lessons open?
It may have already, I'll have to check on that. Summer camps are open, so, but I can let you know, and mention that next meeting too.
Okay.
And I have a question from a resident.
Sure.
I know this is going to sound weird, but have you found any fatbergs in the Nashua sewer system? These are these giant, like, clumps of grease and stuff. I guess there's been a lot of video about this in the United Kingdom, and somebody said, well, don't we have those here? And I said, I've never seen any.
We do find a lot of large grease clumps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about.
A fatberg, it's supposed to be big enough to be like an iceberg. All right.
Yeah, but I can ask that question.
Yeah, I was just, people ask you very odd questions sometimes.
Sure, I'll
Okay.
ask that question.
Any other commissioners? Oh, sorry, we were on director's report. Now we'll move to commissioners' comments. Any comments by commissioners?
Well.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment, Mayor. I talked with the city attorney in the city of Keene, and he said they have quite an array of solar panels at their wastewater treatment plant. And also, the town of Peterborough also has a new, I just thought that may be something to think about.
We actually have looked at that, and I was hoping to put solar panels on top of our buildings. I thought that but I was told that there's not enough land or enough roof space to install solar panels.
But Commissioner Moriarty is talking about on the ground, I think. not-
I don't know,
I
I've
know.
never been there.
They said there wasn't enough area, because Tian Weeks has been up there a lot.
That's an interesting comment, because I saw the one in Peterborough.
Oh,
which
you
is-
have?
Yeah, it's pretty big. And I was thinking, if we decide not to have the space over on Navajo be a garden, that's just an empty space, and it's open, it's still open. That might be a use for it.
It's an interesting thought.
Okay. Commissioner Lemon.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the homeless encampment meetings and suggest that I will have our outreach workers go and check out what is happening. I don't know exactly where 58 Vine is, and see if we have the beginnings of, if there are people there all the time, it's probably the beginnings of an encampment, and I'll talk to our folks, because we don't need any more encampments, because we're trying to get people into the shelter and through.
Anyone else? All right.
Yes.
Commissioner
Mayor
Shea.
Dodge, thank you kindly. I would ask, I've received some outreach from constituents, both this week and last fall, from various sports interest groups who have, and it's not just an individual sport, it's multiple sports that have identified or raised the issue of a need for some additional space for active recreation. I know that some time ago there was a kind of a proposal for the, I want to say the Gilson Road area for bringing more fields online, but there were some great active recreation already happening in that area with mountain biking and hiking and things. And ultimately that concept didn't move forward. I would ask that as we look to budget discussions and to planning for future enhancement, that we redouble our efforts to identify field space that could have the turf reconditioned to put that space to higher and better use and promote more physical activity in the community. I'd ask that we continue to look to that as a priority. In terms of creating opportunities for recreation in our community, we have great playgrounds, we have the Performing Arts Center coming online, and I do know that there is some cost associated with turning turf over and maintaining turf, but I have to believe that one of the most cost-effective methods of creating opportunity for people to enjoy themselves and get physical and get out there is the maintenance of a field. And so as we look to the future, and I know that, Mayor, you have been a big advocate for improving access for sport in general. But if we could continue to strive towards that, and not just look to youth sport, but also creating and supporting efforts for adults to engage in sport, I think that is, I love my kids, and I know here in the community we're very enthusiastic about supporting kids' sports, but I think it is just as important to maintain and create opportunities for adults to get out there too. So that's kind of at top of mind for me this week, and I appreciate that folks have been interested in that, and I would just ask that we continue to focus on that as an area for investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other commissioners' comments? All right, we'll move on to personnel. Item A, Commissioner Moriarty.
The motion is to approve and unseal the non-public minutes for personnel from the Board of Public Works meeting of February 23rd, 2023.
Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes?
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. Motion passes. Item B, Commissioner Shea.
I put down my agenda and walked away from my child who has an iPad that is very loud.
Commissioner Lemon.
If you,
Okay.
thank you.
Move to approve the resignation of Cheryl McNeil, Administrative Assistant, Wastewater Department, effective March 1st, 2023.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Dodges?
Yes. Motion passes. Item C, Commissioner Shoneman.
I move to approve the resignation of Sean Dubois, street operator, street department, effective March 16, 2023.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes?
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Item D, Commissioner Moriarty.
Move to approve the resignation of Robert DeLuca, truck driver, street department, effective March 21st, 2023.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes?
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. Now we have a non-public session. Commissioner Moriarty.
I move by roll call that the board go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A3, Roman numeral 2B, the hiring of any person as a public employee.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon?
Yes.
Commissioner Shea?
Yes.
Mayor Donches?
Yes. So we will go into non-public session, and so we will cease the video until